والإفادة والاستفادة والدعاء إلى الهدى والضلالة على الخير والحث والتمسك بكتاب الله والسنة رسول الله ابتغاء مرضات الله وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. Praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, praise it's worthy of a beneficent bestower of bounties and a granter of mercies and an elevator of status. And we ask our Lord Most High to send copious and eternal and unlimited blessings and salutations upon our beloved Prophet Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And we acknowledge the traditional owners of this land and we pay our respects to their elders past and present. So we continue inshallah azza wa jal, I think it's chapter 23, isn't it?
Yeah.
From chapter 23 from the book of Imam al-Haddad. We continue from where we left off last week. And he said, وَأَعْنِي قال المؤلف رحمه الله رضي الله عنه وعنكم نفعنا به وبكم. وأعني, so he's talking about the general duties that we're entrusted with. He says وأعني برعيتك العامة من جعل الله لك عليه ولاية من ولد وزوجة ومملوك فكل هؤلاء من رعيتك. So he talks about, sorry, still. So it says, at the top of page 87, as for your public charges, and as we mentioned last week, the word charges, it's an English legal, it's an old English legal term that means the thing that you're duty bound by. It's that you've been charged with that responsibility, means you carry that capacity, they can carry that responsibility to fulfill a particular thing. These are all people entrusted by Allah Azza wa Jal, by God, to your custody, such as children, your wife. Now this is an old book, but if it was a slave in the sense of a riq, of someone that you purchased, the slave still has rights upon the master, Islamically speaking. All of whom are part of your charge. So it doesn't just limit a person to one's children, wife, as the case might be. It may be younger brothers or sisters, as the case might be. It might be employees. You might be the CEO of a company or the manager of a shop, or you might be the Imam of a masjid, or you might be the teacher in a classroom. So the students, they're the people that you have responsibility for. They're the people that you have a trust to fulfill with regards to them. It says, وَالْوَاجِبُ عَلَيْكَ إِرْشَادَهُمْ إِلَىٰ الْقِيَامِ بِمَا فَرَضَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ مِنْ طَاعَاتِهِ وَمَا حَرَّمَ عَلَيْهِ مِنْ مَعْصِيَتِهِ. So he says, in other words, he says, Imam al-Haddad, he says that the obligatory part of it upon you, it is your duty to guide them to the performance of that which God Allah Azza wa Jal has made obligatory. So whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made wajib or fard upon an individual that's in your charge, that's your responsibility to discharge. That's why they say charge and discharge. That's why the words they go together in the legal meaning of it. So you've been charged with something, then you discharge it, you fulfill that trust. Okay? You discharge that responsibility by making sure firstly they are aware of their obligations, and you encourage them, and in some circumstances, if you were the wali, if you were the governor, if you were the president, prime minister, whatever, then the chief of police, or the mayor, as the case might be, the person who's given authority by the people to implement the law, then it's your responsibility to make sure they implement it. And the same with the avoidance of that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made forbidden, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has it says that which He forbade, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So those two things work hand in hand. That it's your job in the sense of your children at a certain age, the Prophet said, teach them to pray. At 7, if they reach 10 and they're not praying, وَضْرُبُوا عَلَيْهَا, then you've got to discipline the child. And the Prophet ﷺ, he also mentioned, in our day and age it might be, capital punishment and corporal punishment and all these things, but he said that the house that doesn't have a salt, صَبَّ عَلَيْهِمْ salt al-Haddad. The salt is a stick, basically. So the house that doesn't have a stick hanging in it, Shaitan's in charge of the house. It doesn't necessarily mean that one has to be whipped or caned. We used to get caned at school. None of you are probably old enough to remember that. But when we used to go to school, it was like, don't get sent to the deputy principal's office because you're going to get caned. And the deputy principal would have different types of canes depending on who it was. And you'd either cop it on the hand, they'd cop it on the leg. That was in the old days. That's how it used to be. Now, child abuse and all those things. But I think it did good for a lot of people. So to hang the cane, as the case might be, in the house does not necessarily mean to hit anyone. That's not the Prophet ﷺ. He never hit anyone, male, female, or child, outside of battles. It never happened to the Prophet ﷺ. But he said that a house that doesn't have it in it, the shaitan's in control of that house. It's about discipline, and it's about the people of the household having some sort of trepidation with regards to punishment. So there's some sort of fear there to the kids. There should be some sort of like, if I don't do the right thing, there's going to be consequences, and consequences for my actions that I don't like.
Deterrent.
It's definitely a deterrent, and laws are made for that reason as well, to deter people from doing things. So from the age of 10 until one becomes pubescent, normally 14, that's when that strict disciplining comes into play. Once the child has turned 14, they're considered an adult, or they become pubescent, then that rule doesn't apply to them anymore. Then the Prophet ﷺ, sahibhu, become his friend, and involve that child in your business. For if you don't do that, the child will rebel against you, and that's the teenage years. Treat them like kids. They act like kids. And that's unfortunately one of the ills of the society. And the biggest cause of death in Australia for 18 to 45-year-old males is, guess what? Suicide. That's just outrageous if you ask me. You know, you'd think that'd be the case in a third world country where people don't have food, and you know, or there's war, maybe Syria or Yemen or somewhere like that. But in a country, alhamdulillah, as safe as Australia, and you know, as affluent as Australia, that the highest killer of males between 18 and 45 is suicide. That's abhorrent. That's an abhorrent in my book statistic, and that's more scary in my view than terrorism. Okay, so he goes on and he says, that's your job to do that. وَاحْذُرْ أَنْ تُحَاسِبَهُمْ أَنْ تُسَامِحَهُمْ فِي تَرْكِ وَاجِبٍ أَوْ إِرْتِكَابِ مُحَرَّمٍ. So he says that beware of allowing them to neglect an obligation or commit a forbidden act. So this is one of the things, again, in our households, unfortunately, which we don't really understand. I think I've said the story many times to you, that someone will call me to the house, Shaykh, look at my son, you know, he's got one of those funky haircuts, whatever, it's sticking up and long and whatever. You know, tell him, shouldn't he like fix that haircut? Isn't it haram to have a haircut like that? And I'll, you know, generally, most of the time, inevitably I'll say to the father who's asking, I said, does your son pray? They'll be like, no. I said, well, which one's more important? Which one's more important? That your son is, in your eyes and in the eyes of your own peers, respectable with his haircut, or that your son prays? Which one's more important? He's like, of course prayer. So we'll pick on one and leave the other. Which one do you think you should pick on? Of course it's prayer. So our priorities are mixed up in our houses, unfortunately. And you always hear the older guys, oh, you know, this country, it's oppressive, and this ruler, he's oppressive, and we need to get rid of these rulers because, you know, they don't apply Sharia. Well, uncle, you know, do you apply Sharia in your home? Is that what goes on in your household? Do you make sure that, you know, all the laws of Allah Azza wa Jal that are obligatory upon yourself and your family, and you're the king of the household, or the president, or the prime minister, or the chief raka, or whatever you want to call it, you're the one responsible in your household. What are you doing for the charges? How are you discharging your responsibility towards these people and towards Allah Azza wa Jal? Don't go complaining about the king of this country or the president of that country, or he's oppressing or she's oppressing. What are you doing in your household? So it goes back to what are the priorities in our homes. So if the son or the daughter doesn't do well at school, there's ramifications. But if the son or daughter doesn't pray or doesn't dress appropriately or has friends that maybe are questionable, then there's no, don't worry, as long as they're doing good at school, don't worry. And then what's the encouragement in our households? Oh, become an engineer, become a doctor, become a lawyer, become wealthy. Not the encouragement of be a taqi, be a person who's conscious of Allah Azza wa Jal, be a muhsin, be a person who's excellent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and excellent to the people around you, be mutawadi', be humble. With those things, don't worry about those things. They're not important. So then what are our children going to turn out like? And if that's the encouragement in our homes, what's our community going to be like? When where's the encouragement to be honest? To be honest. No worries, don't worry about that. You know, the point is, unfortunately, you see that if the son does something or the daughter does something wrong and they're honest, they get disgraced. Okay, they did something wrong, fair enough, but they were honest about it. Okay, they should be rewarded for being honest, and then the zajr, the chastisement should be there also for doing the wrong thing. It's not that you just, because if the person's honest and you chastise them and you go off and lose your mind, they're going to stop being honest, especially if it's a kid, especially if it's someone young. They're like, why should I tell the truth? I'm going to get in trouble either way, so I may as well tell something that's not true and I'll get out of it. So we're actually teaching our children bad qualities, and we're not encouraging them to have that, because we ourselves don't value those qualities, and our brothers and those people, because younger siblings look up to their older siblings. That's whether you like it or not. That's the way it is. No matter what kind of relationship you have with your younger brother or younger sister, in the end they look up to you if you're older than them, and you look up to your older brothers and sisters, whether you like it or not. That's the natural way things are. So what is it that we're instilling in them? What is it that we're teaching them? And not so much by what we say, but by our actions. Like, we think we're getting away with it. How, the good old, someone calls for someone, I'll tell him I'm not here. So we're teaching the kids to lie on our behalf, and then we say, why is my kid a liar? Why is he a liar? Amazing. Why is she lying for? Why does this is a big one always, why does my daughter disrespect me? And you see the way the wife is with the husband when she's got no respect for her husband, or very little respect for her husband when talking about him when she's upset, calling her friends, talking in front of the kids. That's another major thing that goes on. Everything in the household, everyone knows. Issues that don't concern kids, the kids know about. And then we wonder why our kids are a little bit irregular when kids need to know stuff that kids need to know. Kids need to be left to grow and make mistakes and learn how to be a human being and learn how to be an adult and learn how to be responsible. Not carry the responsibility or even worse than that, how many times it's happened. A husband and wife are having problems, and whoever's the oppressed one, the one who's not getting their rights, will take the kids on their side. Oh, your mum did this, oh, your dad. What are you doing? And they think that by getting the kids on side, they're doing something good. They don't realise they're ruining their kids. And then years and years and years later, the kids rebel, the kids do whatever, take off hijab, don't pray anymore, shave their beards, whatever it might be, the outward signs, and the reality is even a lot worse than that. They wonder, why do my kids go like that? Why are my kids lost all of a sudden? Well, I used to go to the mosque and I used to pray and I used to teach them Qur'an. But what was your actions like? Actions speak louder than words. What are your actions like? So they're the things that we have to consider with regards to all the people around us. If you're the manager of a whatever it might be, you don't show up on time, you're always running late to appointments, you take days off whenever you feel like it, what are your staff going to do? Staff are going to do the same thing. So be careful, he says. He says, beware of allowing them to neglect an obligatory or commit a forbidden act. So what he says is that that's not what he says. He says in English it's a little bit. He says, وَاحْذُرْ أَن تُسَامِحَهُمْ فِي تَرْكِ وَاجِبٍ. So don't forgive them. Don't let them off the hook, in other words. What are the consequences? And that's another unbelievable thing you see. Kids running, nuts around the household, and there's no consequence for their action. What a little, what do they say? Za'ron, all these words they say about their kid. Oh, he's a little rascal. So that's what we encourage our kids to be. Because we applaud the behaviour and al-Billah that is, the sentious. We reward that behaviour and al-Billah that's rebellious. And of course the kid is getting rewarded and getting attention for doing that behaviour, so they're going to keep doing it. And what are we to say about the kid that's, as we say, straighty 180? He's dopey. This kid's dopey. Don't worry about that kid. Leave him on the side. The one that's conscientious in their studies, the one that doesn't get in trouble, he's dopey or she's dopey. Don't worry about her. That's the classic Lebanese call. This person, they'll be of no effect and no avail in the world. So what we're doing is, we're rejecting the behaviour that is in the sense prophetic, And we were all in the behavior that when A'udhu Billah is a sense satanic. When A'udhu Billah. And it's not my house, and it's not your house, and it's not your relative's house. It's the general go. The kid that's always rowdy and makes trouble. They're the most liked kid. Everyone kisses them and hugs them and grabs them. So what are we teaching our kids? And then we wonder later on why we got problems in our society. We wonder why our akhlaq, our character, and our disposition and our conduct is, when Allah Azza wa Jal leaves a lot to be desired. So, وَحْذِرْ أَن تُسَامِحَهُمْ. Okay, that you don't let them off the hook. They need to be reprimanded. There needs to be discipline in the household. And how's the other one? The kid telling the mum off or talking disrespectfully to the mum. And the dad's just sitting there. Sometimes even the dad's laughing. Ho, ho, ho. How funny is my kid? Or vice versa. The kid's being rude to the father and the mum's there, just secretly sniggering away in the corner feeling. What are you teaching your child? And these are things that I've personally seen. Personally, I've seen these things, not even wanting to see them when Allah Azza wa Jal. So what are we teaching our kids with regards to conduct and character? What is it that we want from them in the end? We want rascals? Is that what we want? Well, that's what we've got. That's what we've got when Allah Azza wa Jal. If we look at we're 10 times more likely, males in Muslim society, in Sydney, New South Wales, 10 times more likely than the rest of the population to end up in jail. 10 times the jail rate when Allah Azza wa Jal. And then we wonder, and this is the other one. This is the classic one. It's not my son, it's his friends. Never have I ever spoken to anyone and it's ever been their son's fault. Because if their son is their fault, then it reflects badly on who? The parents. Of course it's not the parents' fault. When a'udhu billah ma'adullah, no, hajj. No, it's not your kid, it's everyone else. Your kid's a good kid, but peer pressure. What kind of tarbiyah is that? What kind of tarbiyah is that? When we were young, and one time we did something wrong, the principal got us into his office and we were like, there's caning going to happen. I said, no worries, caning's all right. Well, I'm going to ring your dad. No, listen. Cane me, belt me, shoes, punch, do whatever you want. But don't tell my dad. Because if my dad finds out, I'm a goner. That's it. Not going to happen. No, that's it. You never let you live it down. But these days it's the opposite. When the parents get called to school, it's the teacher that's at fault. Oh, the teacher, this. Allah yarhamu, my old man, when he took us to school, he used to say to the teacher, Khalas, he's yours, just do whatever you want with him and give me the pieces. That's what he used to tell my teachers. Teachers would look at him like, they're not used to that Arabic, Do whatever you have to do with him, and whatever's left over, the pieces, send the pieces home. That's how it was. Because Allah yarhamu, He wanted to raise us properly, He wanted us to have good character. That was the most important thing. Lie? What lie? If you ever lied and you got caught, that's it. The mum would get the chili, fill up your mouth with chili, and that's it. You'd be ostracised. It's not just that. You can't eat at the table. Can't watch TV. Can't go and have dessert. Can't go and come with the family. That's it. Liar. And no one would even, other sisters and brothers would be like, yeah, and no one would even talk to you. And we make fun of the person that was lying. You can't lie now. Why would that? Normal when I was a Bilal. وَادْعُهُمْ إِلَى مَا فِيهِ نَجَاتُهُمْ وَسَعَادَتُهُمْ فِي الدَّارِ الْآخِرَةِ. Summon them to that which is their salvation and happiness, in which their salvation and happiness in the hereafter lies. So, in other words, I think he goes on, he says, he talks about that a little bit later. So, what is it that we're training our kids for? I can't remember where I was the other day. When the kid was there, and we go, don't you want to go Jannah? The kid doesn't even know what Jannah is. Like, what's Jannah? What's in Jannah? I'm like, what? Serious? I can't even think where it was. Then I had to explain to the kid about Jannah. What? I'm not even, I'm a stranger. We're just visiting the house. Well, I can't remember where it was. I freaked out, let alone the kids. Like, what's Jannah? I'm like, heaven, man, paradise. They want to go, they want Allah to be happy with you. They're like, I don't know, what's there? What's in paradise? You've never told your kid what's in paradise. You told your kid what's at Kmart. You told your kid what's at Time Zone. You told your kid what's at Woolies. You told your kid what's at, the stadium. You never told your kid what's in Jannah? Seriously, first of all, I thought the kid was joking or being a smart aleck. I looked at the kid's face. They weren't. They were serious. Oh, Jannah, what do you like? Mars bars? Oh, there's big Mars. What want you to tell a kid? What's in Jannah? Mars bars and food, and you're happy all the time, and Allah's happy. Allah's happy with us? That's the main thing. Oh, okay. That's it. How can that not be the case? All right, we used to probably, I didn't ask him about Jahannam, but maybe the family's always saying, you're going Jahannam, you're going, I don't know, but how is it that the child isn't raised to look forward to the hereafter, to the eternal life? How does that make sense? That's what we're just here on a trip, here just hanging out for a couple of 60, 70 years, and then to the eternal. So you don't bring your kid up to think about the eternal life. Then what is the point of the existence? Do whatever you want then, don't worry, there's no whatever. So the focus of those who are in your charges, and in particular those younger than you, is to give them that foresight, to give them that vision that, look, there's a life after this life, and what's in it, man, whatever your heart desires. لا عين سمعت ولا عين رأت ولا أذن سمعت ولا خطر على قلب البشر. No eye has seen, and no eye has heard, and no heart, and no mind has ever even thought of what's in Jannah. No one knows how great it is. We got a bit of a glimpse. But what? The kid's not thinking about Jannah. What's the kid thinking about? What's the kid thinking about? Anyway. وأحسن أدبهم ولا تغرس في قلوبهم حب الدنيا وشهواتها فتكون بذلك مسيئا إليهم. So that's the part I was referring to. He says that, teach them courtesy and do not plant in their hearts the love of the world and its cravings. Like I said, that's what's going on. Be this, be a doctor, be this, be a lawyer, be that, be an engineer. Make sure you get money. And if the kid's simple and straightforward and humble and honest, this kid, ma bien faire. No benefit, this kid's of no benefit. What do you mean if the kid's no benefit? Even Allah yarhamah, because we're talking about that, when I finished, alhamdulillah, I worked as a lawyer for a couple of years, I wanted to go alhamdulillah study. So his friends came around to talk him out of it, let him go. They go, what do you want the kid go? Like now he's got to work and he's got to make money and he's got to buy a house and whatever. We lived on the North Shore as well, so he had to have heaps of money to buy a house. And then Allah yarhamah, alhamdulillah, he said, look, if the kid goes and learns one thing and then when I die, reads the Fatiha, for me that's worth all these things. Just alhamdulillah, shut them all up. But the impetus in the whole society was, how can you let your son go? This is his time. This is his time to make money and chase the world and all these things. So what is it that we're planting out in the hearts of our kids? It doesn't mean that the child should be raised to be humble and raised to be honest, but raised to be a dope. Al-mu'min fatinun, my words, the Prophet was saying, fatinun qais, intelligent and crafty, both. In other words, it's good to be, I call it doughy. I don't know if that's the right technical word that we have to ask someone in psychology. People are doughy. And you give them a book and give them a test, they get 99 out of 100. But they've got no common sense. So there's no point, that's intelligence, a type of intelligence. Go speak to the guys one of my friends is a chaplain, one of them is Shaykh, I know he's a chaplain. Tell the jail guys any story, tell them 3 parts, they'll work out the whole story because they got common sense. And it's a type of wisdom. So it's street smarts. One time we did it, we told them half the story. They figured it out like that. And then we went with all our so-called intellectual friends. I had to explain everything to them. Because they live in a different sheltered society. Those guys are, the streetwise guys, they got to fend for themselves. Dog eat dog, every man for himself, all that kind of business. So either they work it out, or they get shot, or they get beaten and they never get to any stage. So it's not just about, I'm not saying you should go to jail, of course not. It's not just about being intelligent, it's about being able to use your intelligence for the best of what Allah wants, the best of your life. So the child not only has to be intelligent, but you have to teach the child conflict resolution. And Imam al-Haddad talks about it. You have to teach the child how to be wise, body language. Not just to write the books and study 4 hours every evening. It has to be done. Otherwise, what's the use of a child that's not good at school? What's the point of that? What's that child doing in their life? They're not successful at school. All right, if they're a star athlete, tamam, good, no worries. If they're not good at school, let them go get an apprenticeship and do whatever they've got to do. Now, I don't know what it is, year 10, year 12, when you can leave, whatever it might be. But a person in each stage of their life, if they're not successful in that stage of their life, they're going to feel like a failure. And feeling like a failure means a person will end up being a failure, and that's not what we want. So the child not only has to be good at school, but they have to understand what life's about in accordance with their age. And this is the classic Lebo one. Classic. The kid comes up and goes, "Dad, what's this?" Skotula. Like, I mean, shut up. Hey, shut up, kid. What? Shut up, kid. And you go and see people like where we grew up on the North Shore, the kid will ask him a question, the dad will give a 5-minute explanation according to the child's understanding. And you say, why don't we ifham? Why don't we understand? Why don't we comprehend? Well, who gave the kid enough time? Who gave the kid, if you don't give the kid time and explain to him how the world works, what are you doing as a father? What are you doing as a mother? And Imam will talk about it in a sec. He says, وَقَدْ وَرَدَ. So, don't let them love only the dunya. Don't encourage them to love just the dunya. Be successful in the dunya. The dunya, it's mazra'at al-akhirah. It's whatever we plant in this world, we'll harvest for the hereafter. But don't let them be overwhelmed and overcome and only think about, overcoming this guy and not letting this guy put it on them, and making sure that, when two people are together, they work out what's going on, like being devious. And wala shahwatum, don't let the shahwat overcome them. What does the prophetic tradition say? Takhawshanu inna ni'ama la tadum. So there's a prophetic tradition that says, don't every day feed your kids what they want to eat. How about the old days when we used to go to school? Back in the day, I don't know if that happens anymore. Some of the kids, their mums would cut the crusts off the bread. The sandwich bread. And look at the kid. What's the matter with you? And they're like, "Oh, my mum, you're an idiot. Like, we used to give it to him. What are you talking about? You eat 15 sandwiches without crust, Like, what's the matter with you?" And they come next day. At home, his mum lets him get away with it. And we're like talking when we were older, not when we were, we're in high school. What do you mean cut the crust off the bread? What's the matter with you? So if once the child, and this is a bad Lebo one as well, like the classic story I've told you 20 times, the guy's 20 years old, comes home, "Mum, make me food." You what? You're 20 years old, mate. You're a man, you're hairy all over the place. You can't make your own food, and and talk to him, he wants to talk like a man. "Oh, I'm this, and I went there, and I did that." You can't even feed yourself. Can't even clean your own underwear. Unfortunately, misfortunately. You can't even make your bed. Your room stinks. You stink. Your nails are all grotty. Your hair's all over the joint. Clothes don't match. And you want to be a man, and you come home and, mummy, make me food. And the funny thing is, in our Lebanese houses, there's always a pot of food somewhere, or something in the fridge, you put it in the microwave and reheat it. Nah. And what I'll tell you is, no, mum should make my food. What? So how do we raise these? There's still a boy, unfortunately, 20 years old. How do we raise these kids? Not only that, he pulls his ciggy. He's 20 at home, smoking the ciggy at home. Well, what do we teach these kids? Where's the respect? They're one of the guys I know, he's 42. He smokes. If his dad comes around the corner, his face goes white. Straight away he throws a cigarette. Straight away he throws a cigarette. No way. And then he's got always in his pocket, perfume, sprays himself, puts the gum, so his dad doesn't. His dad knows he smokes. His dad knows, but out of respect for his father, no way he'll let his father see him smoke, because he knows it's not a good thing to do. And his father, alhamdulillah, he's multazim. He's a very practicing Muslim, alhamdulillah. So the kid's 20, sitting in the house, ashing in the ashtray. What are we teaching our kids? And Imam will talk about what it is. He'll talk about what it is. So don't let that's full desire. Who's going to rein this kid in? His wife? Allah aine. Allah help his wife. Allah help her. Or the princess. Princess. She's got princess on her Facebook page. Princess here. Princess this. Princess that. When you find a castle and a prince, go be a princess. But until then, you're an amma. You're a slave of Allah Azza wa Jal. You're a servant of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Allah help this kid, this bloke too that marries her, when a'udhu billah, because at home she's a princess. Her dad treats her like a princess. Her mother doesn't like what she does, but she goes along with it because women understand these things. But she goes along with it because that's how she's treated. Then let her husband tell her no later on. Allah ya'een. Allah help him. Allah help him. And then what? He's in an unhappy marriage. She's unhappy. She's not a princess. He's looking at her going, who the hell have I married? And Allah help us. So that's the ramifications of these things. That's the ramifications. And we're full of them. Princess, this, have a look. Facebook and all these, they're full of them. Full of them. Full of them. They're all over the place. Even one time, just recently, one of the little girls that was staying with us, she got makeup. What do you got? Princess. Are you a princess? Yes. No, you're not a princess. I'm a princess. No, you're not. Where's your castle? No, that's it. In my mind, I'm a princess. She's only 4, but you can't convince her she's not. That's it. Allah help her. Allah help those around her, and especially her husband. When the time, inshallah, comes. So, and is that what we want our daughters to be? Really? Princesses. Is that what we want them to be? Like fairy tale. That's what it is, a fairy tale. Fairies are jinns, so you go work it out from there. So if you do that, بِذَلِكَ فَتَكُونْ بِذَلِكَ مُسِيئًا إِلَيْهِمْ. For you would thus have done them harm. You've done them harm. And I'll tell you, from being involved as an imam in couples, what's the story? The guy gets married. Now, when I first started, guys were getting married 26, 27. Now they're getting married 22, 23. Alhamdulillah, that's good. And so believe me, that from 15 years ago, the guys that are 22, 23 were more mature than the guys that were 26, 27, 15 years. Now the guys that are getting married now, 22 and 23, because of deen, they were much more mature than 15 years ago, the guys that were getting married, 26 and 27. Much more mature. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. It's a big ni'mah. Because what happens from that age? If you don't get married and hooked up when you're 20, it's hard. The society's hard. Both ways, male and female. So what happens? Alhamdulillah, it's not happening as much. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. The guy's 26, 27, thinks his wife's like, hey, how are you? Mate, this, that. He's treating her like a mate. She's looking at him going, who is this boy? I need a man. And you can see how that goes, how long that lasts. One time the couple came, 3 months they were married. 6 weeks of those 3 months, she went back to her parents' home. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? As a product of that. And you're saying, and then if he complains to his parents, God help her. And if she complains to her parents, God help him. What do we got? Conflict. When disputes that just rage on and rage on and rage on. And that's just one of the many ill, like how do we represent to non-Muslims in a land where we're 2.5%, 3%? Ask Pauline Hanson, she'll tell you how we represent. Right? Ask these right-wing people and they'll tell you how we represent. Ask each other. Even the Muslims say, get someone who's not a Muslim, they're more reliable. Why? Because of the upbringing. Because of the upbringing when Allah Azza wa Jal. And then he talks about it. وَقَدْ وَرَدَ أَنَّ أَهْلَ الْإِنسَانِ وَوَلَدُهُ يتعلقون به بين يدي الله ويقولون يا ربنا إن هذا لم يعرفنا ما أوجبت علينا من حقك فاقتص لنا منه. It has been said that the wife and the children of a man shall clutch to him before Allah or before God and say, O Allah, O Lord, this one did not teach us your rights upon us. Therefore, give us retaliation from him. And that's what happens on the Day of Judgment. Because now, what are the parents complaining about now? Their kids. So they complain, my kid, Shaykh, my kid. Tamam. But what happens on the Day of Judgment? The parent comes to complain, and حقوق الأهل مقدسة, like the rights of parents are sacred. No one can look at their parents and tell them off. I'm not even supposed to look at your parents in the face, really. Like out of tawqir, reverence to your parents. You're not supposed to be doing that. You're not supposed to be telling your parents off. Okay, you can be a little bit buddy-buddy with them when you're a bit older, but there has to be respect. There has to be more than respect, reverence. You have to revere your parents. If it wasn't for them, where would you be? It doesn't matter who you think you are now, or what stage you've got to now when Allah. if it wasn't for their guidance and their love and their nurturing and their looking after you, you would have got nowhere. Yet still, when the parent comes to complain to Allah Azza wa Jal, Allah Azza wa Jal calls the kid. He says, how did your dad raise you? What name did he give you? What mother did he pick to rear you? Pick some, when Allah Azza wa Jal, as they say, lured woman to raise, it doesn't work. Did he give you a good name even? Did he teach you the Qur'an? No? Oh well, then the father gets judged first, because if the foundation isn't set by the parents, how can the parent expect that if they didn't raise their child properly, that their child is going to act well towards them once their child matures? It's an impossibility. إِلَّا مَنْ رَحِمَ رَبَّهُ. Except if Allah Azza wa Jal decides to have mercy and empathy on that child, then that happens. And sometimes you see it. Sometimes you see, like one time we went to do a salah, the father was all over the joint. Drugs, alcohol, gambling, divorced, lewdness, and the kids, mashallah, they're upright. SubhanAllah, how? Only Allah knows. But that's a rarity. That's a rarity. Normally the kids follow what their parents do. So, if a person, now that also means the wife. The wife, she's also responsible. كلكم راعي والمرأة مسؤولة في بيت زوجها. The wife, she's responsible in the house of her husband, so that she's responsible for the kids, their upbringing, what goes on. And the worst thing in the households is mum's screaming. What are you screaming for? I know, my next door neighbours, I hear them all the time. We live in units. Screaming. They're not Lebanese, they're not Muslim, but still, what's that going to prove to the kid if you scream at the child? It's going to do nothing. All it's going to do is show how weak you are. Discipline the child. So that means you need techniques and tactiques. If you don't have tactiques and techniques, the child's going to laugh at you. So, what does the child want and like the most? Whatever it is, I don't know, it used to be Game Boys and PS3s and whatever it is, just turn it off. Put it in the cupboard, lock the cupboard, then see how your child acts. They like this kind of dessert. Give it to the other children, but don't give it to that child that's acting up. That's called tarbiyah. That's called rearing the child to be a particular way. Not letting out one's frustrations by screaming at the kid. What's that going to do to the child? It's going to make the child, I know from one child, that's when he used to get bored during the school holidays. He used to go to his mum, give her a hard time until she started screaming at him. And then he used to always time it, run down the stairs, run around the corner, and then his mum would throw the shoe at him, and either he'd get past or get hit with the shoe. That was fun for him, because he knew the reaction he was going to get from his mum. He knew the exact reaction he's going to get every time. And when his friends came over to the house, they knew how his mum reacted. One of them is not even Arab. Then he picked up the word that his mum would say. Blah. He knew the word. He's not even Arab. He knew. What does that mean? What does ule mean? Ule.
Dog, yeah.
Does it?
Yeah. Can we dog? Can we ule?
It means a lot of things.
It's a derogatory phrase, no doubt. But what the asl of the word is, I'm not sure. Anyway, it was like, hey, you, something like that. Anyway, so what respect is this child going to have for the mother that acts like that? And the child at 6 or 7 years of age knows which button to press to get the mum upset to that level. You're an adult. It's a child. He or she is a child. So if you don't have a plan, about how you're going to raise your children and what you want from your children and what you want your children to be, how's it going to happen? We don't even have a plan when at breakfast what we're going to have for dinner. And even all of us, when we get together with our friends, we're like, that's me, yeah, I'll get back to you. What do you mean that's me? And then some of my friends and from our culture, we say, oh look, let's go, at the end of the year we'll go away. Oh mate, it's 3 months away. What do you mean it's 3 months away? No, it's too long. I don't know how these people plan the trip for next year. Allah, inshallah. Well, inshallah, we do our plans, and if Allah gives us life and the world continues as it is, we'll do that thing. No, it's too far away. Tell me the day of, the day before. What kind of a life is that? If we don't have a plan for our own lives, how are we going to plan for our children to be respected from Allah? Have a gaze of Allah Azza wa Jalla upon the child. Have we ever thought that that's what I want for my child, my wife? That Allah gaze upon my child or my wife or whoever's in my charge, my workers, my students, my whatever it is, my co-workers, my whatever. Have I ever thought that? If not, then what's my plan? What am I doing these things for? What am I trying to achieve? Subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we can only expect to get what we've got, considering what we're doing. They're the ones say, oh Lord, this one did not teach us, did not show us. That's why it's a charge. It says, وَعَلَيْكَ بِمُعَامَلَتِهِمْ بِالْعَدْلِ وَالْفَضْلِ أَمَّا الْعَدْلُ فهو أن توفيهم حقوقهم التي أوجبها الله لهم عليك من النفقة والكسوة والمعاشرة بالمعروف. ومن العدل الواجب أن ترضع بعضهم عن ظلم بعضهم وتقتص لمظلومهم من ظالمهم. وفي الحديث إن العبد يكتب جبارا وما يملك إلا أهل بيتي يعني فيجور عليهم. So he says after that, you must treat them with justice and graciousness. Justice is to give them everything that God has made rightfully theirs in the way of expenditure, rahmakullah. Clothes and living with them charitably. One of its obligations is to take the wrong one's rights from the unjust among them. In a hadith it is said that a servant may be recorded as being a tyrant when he has power over his family alone. That is, when he treats them high-handedly. So, this is, again, not just regards to family, but in particular with regards to family. He says, the mu'amala, the way you deal with them, you've got to deal justly with your kids. And wabil fadl, you've got to be gracious. You've got to be gracious. You can't expect everything to come exactly the way you want it in every single circumstance and situation. And the Imam will talk about how to deal with that circumstance. So the first one, he says, أَمَّا الْعَدْلِ. So justice. In other words, you've got to make sure you discharge your duty to Allah Azza wa Jal and discharge your duty to those who are in your care in a just manner. In other words, you've got to be fair. If you're not fair, it's not going to work out. Justice to give them everything that God has made rightfully theirs in the way of expenditure. So you've got to spend. How many times when Allah Azza wa Jal, just today, subhanAllah, had a case, the wife, what she complained about? Her husband is such a miser. In other words, tight ass. That's not a nice word, but that's what he is. Kills her. You know what he used to do? The bloke, in the summer, doesn't let her turn on the air conditioner. They lived across the road from the shopping centre. What does she have to do? Take the kids across the road to the shopping centre to go to the AC. If she's in the shower, is what she's saying. Oh, it could be true, maybe not, I don't know. If she's in the shower, she takes too long, he's knocking on the doors like you're trying to bankrupt me, get out of the shower. And the ulama talk about that. The ulama talk about if your daughter, someone proposes to your daughter and he's a scholar and he's revered, but he's miserly, don't marry her to him. And the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, about the wives, they come to your house, they're like a prisoner. Like a prisoner. I can't remember the exact English wording of it, but they come, the best of you is the one who's most generous to his family. وَمَا أَكْرَمَهُنَّ إِلَّا كَرِيمٌ وَمَا أَهَانُهُنَّ إِلَّا لَئِيمٌ. Only the gracious, in other words, gracious financially, by conduct, by word, by action, by look, the way a person looks, only the gracious of you will be gracious towards them, and only the la'im, the despicable one, will be miserly with regards to one's wife in that sense. It doesn't mean that some poor blokes, all their wives, I've had many cases like that, where every year she wants to change the couches, every year she wants to get a new phone. The guy doesn't have the capacity to do that. Or the vice versa. One brother, we went to his house, his living room was at least 2 or 3 times the size of this room. Massive. And then she comes and complains, he's never home. What do you want? You want the latest car. You want the latest this. You want to go every year, this holiday, that holiday. He said, every year I spend $60,000 on holidays for my family. He was telling me. Okay, you want the lifestyle, how's the poor bloke going to get it? Okay, you can't have you can't have both. You can't have the best lifestyle and the bloke's around 24 hours serving on you, hand and foot ready to go. It doesn't work. It's either pretty much you got time or you got money. It's very rare that people have both. It's very rare. And she's complaining. His mind's always in business. What do you want? You're always whinging. You want this car. You're always nagging. The neighbour's got this and I haven't got that. I'm telling you, the house is like a dream house. When I went there, I was like, wow, it's like round, overlooking the water, and massive swimming pool, and piano, and they're all Muslims, alhamdulillah. It's like, wow, mashallah. You know, it's Tom Trump live here. Alright, but what's the story? Can't be miserly when it comes to spending money. Can't be miserly. You have to give them what their right is. That's why Allah says in the Qur'an, وَعَاشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ, and treat your women as it's customary. So, 15 years ago, if a man was to get married, it wouldn't be expected that he'd have a mobile phone for his wife and pay the bill. But now, everyone's got a mobile phone, and bill, it's cheap. Back in the days, $30, you just got to turn on your SIM card, that's all. You didn't get to call anyone. Just so the line was open. Now, $30, it's unlimited. It's even cheaper now. There's some for $15. Unlimited calls. What unlimited? We used to be scared to make a call, like, it was so expensive. Hey, look, I'm here. All right, bye. That's it. See you later. Now, mashallah, people, mashallah, day and night and day and data and mashallah. So, that's why the hikmah of Allah, the wisdom of Allah, bil ma'roof, whatever's customary. So, and we've talked about it before, if you grew up in Vaucluse and you live in Vaucluse, you got to take her to shop at Coach and Burberry and wherever else. You grew up in Bankstown, no worries, Best and Less, Target, Kmart, whatever the case might be. If you grew up somewhere, Ashbury or somewhere, then maybe David Jones. Or it's according to the lifestyle and the capacity that you have. The capacity that you have. And that also includes your children. Every time we used to ask for something, what was the answer? No. Why no? Oh, we got money. We can see we got money. Why? And it's a prophetic tradition, Mind you, it's a prophetic tradition, mustanbat min al-ahadith, like taken from... You shouldn't always be telling your children no, just for the sake of saying no, because you've got authority over them. But with I don't know what the word in English is, they become complex, like... Complex, explains a lot. They become complex. They become like knitted up tight into a ball. They become, like they're not free to be who they are. It's like they're guarded and things like that. Repressed, maybe, yeah. Maybe mu'aqqad. Mu'aqqad means like all tied up and knotted up and paranoid even, yeah. Paranoid even, yeah, of course. I said explains a lot. So, spending on them. Clothes. Get them clothes. Don't let your kid go to school. If you got money, everyone's wearing whatever, dry fit or whatever, and your kid's wearing, whatever it is, depending on whatever's trendy at the time. Doesn't mean you should go over and above your means, but if you've got the capacity, why shouldn't you? Or your wife, as the case might be. She shouldn't look like she's walking around in a Hessian bag when a'udhu billah. وَمِنَ الْعَدْلِ الْوَاجِبْ أَنْ تَرْضَعْ بَعْضُهُمْ. This is a big one. This is a huge one. It says also from justice is to take, it's not very good in English, he says, وَمِنَ الْعَدْلِ الْوَاجِبْ. So it's an obligatory part of justice. See, justice, both in Islam, it's called al-adl wal-adala. Adl is justice is itself, and adala is the process of achieving justice. Same in the common law, they say what? Justice has to be done. And justice has to seem to be done. Adl wa adala. Because people have to know how you came to this conclusion. How you come to that ruling. So people have to understand the process of justice so they don't feel aggrieved. So they don't feel like they've been done wrong. So, one kid, tarda. What does it say here in English? Tarda means, in a sense, to prevent. To prevent some of them from oppressing the others. Okay? And to repatriate that wrong. So what happens in a household? Someone's a favourite. The fave kid. We used to have a favourite in our household. Whenever we wanted anything from our dad, we knew who we had to send on a mission. It'd be that particular sibling. We'd go see, in a particular time, after my dad al-Haddad came and he ate and he did what he had to do and he was watching SBS. And after SBS news, that was it. hit him at that time, he was relaxed. So you get things done. Or when the sport came on, you could talk to him because he wasn't interested in sport. You could talk to him. Who did we send in? The one favourite sibling, because we knew that we'd get what we wanted. That's not the way to play things. Whatever that was the case. That's not the way to play things. If one child oppresses another, so that means this is how justice seems to be done. Kid comes, oh, mum, someone hit me. Straight away, whatever, A hit B. A, you're in trouble. Wait a minute, that's not justice. Justice is listen to both sides of the story. That's what justice is. What happened? Don't just take someone's claiming to be hit. Why did they get hit? Maybe they deserved it. You don't know. Maybe they did something worse than that. You don't know. So you've got to hear the kids out. You've got to make it in your household that there's justice. And then, for example, a kid breaks another kid's toy. A child breaks another child. Well, what's the repercussions of that? Oh, I'll go and buy it. But no, that's not how it works. The child that, if it's purposefully, if it's accidentally, whatever, that's a different story. But if it's a purposeful thing, then there has to be repatriation of rights. In other words, the child that broke it on purpose needs to lose something. A child that had their toy broken needs to gain something. If that doesn't happen in the house, what are we teaching our kids? What are we teaching them? How are we teaching them to be just? How are we teaching them to accept that I've done the wrong thing? We never accept we've done the wrong thing when it's always, I've known people for years, they never once admitted they made a mistake. Years! Never once admitted they made a mistake. Even one time we were talking, we were doing a sulah between two brothers, and then we go, like this, he goes, me? I've never made a mistake in my life. He's like 50 something or 60 years old nearly. Between mid 50s, early 60s type deal. In my whole life I've never made a mistake. Who are you? Who are you? Where'd you come from? So you went against the orders of Allah that said there's no ma'soom after the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and you're infallible? Wow. And said it with all confidence. Full confidence. I talked a little bit and I left. What am I going to do there? Someone's infallible. I don't know what to do, but I'll get arrested for doing it, so I can't do it. And that's what he needs. That's what he needs to wake up to himself, but it's not my place to do it. So how are you going to deal with people like that? You can't. So why? Because there's no justice in the household. There's got to be justice. Can't be people doing things, children doing things, because the household, it's a micro society. And it's the basis, it's the building blocks, as they say, of the community, of what society is built on. There's no justice in the households. There's no justice in our businesses. There's no justice in our practices. There's not going to be justice in our communities when Allah bless. It's not going to happen. Or you have these people when Allah bless, some of these lawyers that we deal with, they're just spoiled. Since they've been young, no one ever tells them no. Since they were good at school, so it was like the golden child. The golden child. That's it. They knew they were going to be a lawyer, and they come and they should see some of the letters they write. Like one time, one of my juniors wrote a letter to this particular person, and they spelt the surname wrong. First thing the bloke wrote was, it would go a long way in your career, your professional career, if you learn how to spell people's names right, and like a whole paragraph about who are you? Who are you? So they spelled your name wrong. Get on with it. And you're not even acting on your own behalf. You're acting on behalf of the instructions of your client. It's costing your client money for you to say something that's not even relevant to the matter. But then you can say, oh, please note, my name is spelled, whatever. That's all it needs. If you're really that worried about it, which I don't know why you should be. You're a professional. You've got a job to do. It's common courtesy to spell someone's name wrong. Right, sorry, don't get me wrong. But does it need all that? So why? Because they're spoiled. No one's ever told them no. No one's ever told them they can't. No one's ever told them don't. And everyone around them is, always patting him on the head and saying, what a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. That's the opposite as the princess, that's for the blokes. And the other one is the princess. Oh, the princess, she's so beautiful. Oh, her hair's so curly. Her eyes are so blue. Her skin is so white. Whatever. And then when Allah these people are going to run into walls, and they're other human beings. They're going to fall into depression, and they're going to have AVOs put against them, and they're going to be filmed doing stuff. We live in the days where you can't hide anymore. Someone's filming you, or you're filming yourself, or something's recorded, or something. And what's going to happen? Evidence is there against you or against that individual. It's right there. So what is it that we're raising our children on, wal-a'udhu billah? And if we don't have justice in our households between the children, like for example, we had a case the other time, Shaykh, our mum died, and we want to do whatever the shara is. No worries, come along, try. After 5 minutes of sitting with his family, the youngest of whom was 50 something or other, all of them own their own houses, and half of them were retired. And there's a house here for for nearly $1 million, about $1 million, and it went for 3 years. 3 years they couldn't sell the house because one of the daughters said that my dad used to favour the other, my sister, more than me, and probably he did. But look at the repercussions of that. Poor guy's in his grave, and the house is being fought over by his family, and his ruh is mu'allaq. His soul is between heaven and earth, as the hadith says. He's punishing himself, and ended up. Each girl got about 110,000, and each girl got about 220,000, and she wouldn't cash the check for months and months and months because, and probably she's aggrieved. I'm not saying she isn't, but why? In the household, there's favoritism. In the household, there's oppression. In the household, there's injustice. So that has ramifications internally for the family and externally for those people when they go into society. So the hadith says that in al-Abda yaktubu jabbaran. So that Allah Azza wa Jalla will write a servant to be jabbar, as tyrannical or a tyrant, as it says in the English. When he has, and then in the hadith says, walam wama yamliku illa ahli bayti. But the only thing he possesses is his own family. But he's still written as an oppressor. Well, how about this situation? One time, Dad calls me. This one's a killer. Dad calls me, my daughter, she's out of control, she goes out to all hours, she doesn't tell me where she's going. All right, no worries, uncle, I'll be there. Come around, he's not that much younger than me, maybe 10 years younger than me or whatever. When I was it doesn't look like she's got any deen, doesn't even look like a Muslim when I was so she sit down, look, your dad asked me to come, and look, I don't know what the deal is, just tell me what the deal is. Oh, this, that. I could tell there's something. Just tell me, look, don't worry, go to another room in the kitchen. Just tell us what's going on. Otherwise, your dad's going to lose his mind. Okay, he's upset. Oh, my dad told me to go borrow $50,000 from the bank under my name. Okay, and then when the first payment came, repayment on interest, when the first repayment came, he gave me I gave him the notice that he has to pay. I gave it to him. And I said, look, Dad, you said you were going to repay the loan. You were on Centrelink. And I was lying already about things, and then and you said you're going to repay the loan, so here's the first notice of instalment. And he's like, what? You want me to pay it? Who bought all your nappies? Who bought all your baby food? What? And I said, is that what happened for real? She goes, yeah. I said, let me go, just give me a sec. Went and spoke to the dad. And he's like, yeah, but I raised her. I was like, okay. Go back to the daughter. I said, look, your dad's an idiot. What am I going to tell her? What am I going to tell her? Your dad he's got a problem, sick or something, but he's still your dad. Dad is still your dad. Irrespective of that, the hadith says, Anta wa malak li abik. You and your money belong to your dad. There's nothing you can do. Just pay it and don't get into the situation anymore. Just try and respect the bloke. Just try. I know it's hard. And I told him, I said, what's the matter with you? I told the father, I said, go in the street and beg for money. If that's what you have to do, go in the street, beg for money. But don't take money from your kids. How do you expect, where's the hierarchy now? Where's the hierarchy of who should understand and who should who? When and then we wonder why what's happening is happening when in our society, in our community, when subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that person is tyrannical towards their own family. And then the poor girl, I saw her the other time, when mate, just lost it. Completely lost it. Completely, if you saw her, you'd say, who is this person? Is she Muslim? I don't know. What does she do? What does she believe in? You don't even know what nationality she is or what heritage, because her hair is such a different colour. And how are you going to blame that child? How are you going to blame that child? The person they're supposed to look up to and revere and respect has just been oppressive towards them. When Allah has taken their right. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not an excuse. Everyone's got their own trials and tribulations, and Allah Azza wa Jal doesn't put anyone into a situation, circumstance they can't handle. Question being is that if we, as the people who are in charge and responsible, if we act that way towards the charges, in other words, the people we're responsible for, what do we expect? How can we complain? Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi wa sallam. Is there any questions about that? Any of those things that we said? Fadda.
Sheikh, just going off that last point you made, like, and the whole thing, just how parents have the responsibility over kids. If something's like terribly, terribly happened to a child, like just say the parents on drug and alcohol, for example, and the kids are completely traumatized, and then it's just a cycle, like, how can that cycle break, or how can...
So the question's about, what if the parents are unfit to be parents? There's a different scenario. Shara'an as well, that always what we act in, the maslahat al-walad. The maslaha is whatever's best for the child. So if it's best for the child to be removed and placed with an auntie or placed with another relative, then that's what's got to happen. Like, the difficulty is that, as they say, this is a classic. It's a classic scenario. You need a license to drive a car, and you need a license to own an animal. But you don't need a license to have a child. You can just pop out kids if that's what. You don't have to be married, and you can even be the same sex and all these things these days. You don't have to have a partner. You just go to the whatever it's called. They used to call it the sperm bank, but now whatever it's called, and you apply for it, and that's it. You get the procedure done, and now they're having 3 parents in one that has 1 kid. So that's really where the issue is. Why am I having children? And look, it's in our culture, it's a thing of honour. How are you? Good. You want to? Oh, okay. How many children do you have? How many children? It's about how many? Not really, is it? It's about what are your children like. So it's not why did I have children? Ask. I've done it before, and the results of my own personal survey are depressing. People don't even know why they're having children. This is when I was a lot younger. People don't know why. Oh, we're just having children. Why are you having children? Oh, heck. Everyone else is having children. Why? Well, that's just what you do. You get married and you have kids. Why? Haven't figured that one out. They've got 6 kids. They haven't figured out why they want to have kids. I mean, like, that's what it goes back to. And so, again, if we don't understand that our children are a trust from Allah that we maintain for a certain amount of time until either they pass or we pass. They're not ours. They're not an extension of ourselves. They're a responsibility that that we're burdened with. And Allah says, وَمِنْ أَزْوَاجِكُمْ وَأَوْلَادُكُمْ فِتْنَةٌ لَكُمْ فَاحْذَرُوهُمْ وَعَدُوٌّ لَكُمْ فَاحْذَرُوهُم. Allah says it. It's from your partners, right? فَاحْذَرُوهُم. And then فِتْنَةٌ لَكُمْ, both. There's two separate verses. Okay? Allah saying sometimes they're your enemies. Your spouses and your children, your progeny, can be your enemies. So watch out. Hadar means be careful of them. And fitnatun lakum as well. So they might, when there be a tribulation from Allah. Allah might be testing you through your children. And subhanAllah, one thing that we found was the mashayikh, Allah used to, test them through their children. You'd see that, the Shaykh would have kids, and then one of them, when I was there, inevitably the black sheep, as we sometimes call the child, when Allah doing things that are unimaginable. Like you would never think that a child raised in that way, when Allah would end up doing the things that the child did. So it goes back to the intention. Why do we want kids? Why is it that we want to get married? Is it just because we're bored, or we're lonely, or we have physical urges? Is that what it is, or is there more to the reason that we want to marry? And why are we having children? Is it just because it's time? We've been married 2 years now, and I'm kind of getting bored of you, and you're getting a bit old yourself, so let's just have kids because the biological clock is ticking. Is that why we're having children? So they're the things that we have to consider and that are relevant to, because innamal a'malu binniyat, that deeds are verily by their intentions. And if our intentions aren't straight from the beginning, and like the Prophet, I think it's a tradition, I can't remember if it's a prophetic tradition, or it's from the Salihin, I can't remember. Anyway, one of the people comes to one of the righteous and he says, my wife's about to give birth. What advice would you give me for raising a righteous child? It's too late. What? The kid's not born yet. So no, that's still too late. What do you mean? Well, you yourself, how were you raised? Secondly, who's the wife that you picked? And thirdly, what intention do you have for this child? So that's the type of thing that has to be considered. That's, and going back to what the Imam was saying, what is it that, how do we want to raise our children? What do we want for and from our children? So also the thing I'd like to remind you is the New Year today. Yay. Okay? For the Muslims, it's a celebration for us, and it's a happy time for us, today being first of Muharram. We might have missed the end of the al-amal bi khawatimiha, that deeds by their conclusion. So it's always good to make tawbah, repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's always good, inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to renew our intentions, what we want for this year, and what we want, inshallah azza wa jalla, to achieve with regards to him subhanahu wa ta'ala and to the Prophet of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam. I recommend, people do their New Year's resolutions, they write things down. I recommend too, write it down on your notes, on your phone, or wherever, depending on what type of phone you have. Write it down somewhere where you can look at it frequently and ask yourself, take account of yourself. Am I sticking to the intentions that I had at the beginning of the year? Am I fulfilling my intentions? Am I going to be better in 1438 than I was in 1437? That's the question that we need to... Otherwise, we won't progress. If I'm the same as I was last year, then what have I achieved this year? The best of you is the one who their life is long and their deeds are righteous. That's the best one of us, is that person. So they're the things we have to consider in our lives. They're the things we have to be cautious of, and they're the things we've got to look forward to. That's a celebration, inshallah, of ta'ah lillah, of obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and ibadah and worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's for us fundamental in our relationship with Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now I'd like to say one final thing. There's been this sister that in America, I think it was, she went and did a piece in one of the magazines, Playboy magazine, which for you that are not familiar, it's an erotic men's magazine where previously women would pose naked and all these things. And she did a piece about hijab and about who she was. She wants to be the first Muslim hijabi anchor woman in America. And whatever, she did it, she didn't do it, it's good, it's not good. People are saying, women in particular saying that it's an oppressive magazine, it's oppressed women. Yeah, of course, exploited women, yep, that has been the case. And then there's a difference of opinion of whether she did it or she didn't do it. That has for us as Muslims, we always look back to what Allah says in the Qur'an and the Sunnah of the Prophet of Allah and what the scholars have said. There's no halal and haram either way. She did it, or it's tacky, the photos maybe not the best in the magazine, whatever. She wasn't naked, by the way. I don't think they do that anymore. She was just wearing a hijab and being whoever she was. Okay? It's not haram or halal to do it. Okay, we don't agree with that. Hey, that's fine. But what is the procedure for a Muslim to disagree with another Muslim? He said, alayhi salatu wasalam, 2 words. Ad-deen an-nasiha. 2 words. The whole of the deen is counsel. So, unfortunately, we're so righteous, and I'm being facetious there, that as soon as we see something, we commenting, things will be going viral. Why are these people putting this pressure on the sister? Her intention was to let people who don't normally get exposed to Muslims understand what it's like for a Muslimah who wears hijab to do whatever she does. You agree with it, you don't agree with it, that's fine. You don't agree with it, there's no need to slander the woman, okay, by calling her, I'm not really 100% sure what it is, but they call it slut shaming, which means they called her a promiscuous woman. That's haram. Okay? For her to go and do that piece in the magazine, right, it's not haram. Not haram. Whether you agree with it or don't agree with it, that's a difference of opinion. But it's not haram for her to do that. She was wearing hijab, and from what I read, she didn't say anything outside of what was contained in the Sharia. That's fine. Okay? But for someone to say that she was a promiscuous person for doing that, that's what's called qadhf. That's what's called qadhf. In other words, slander. To slander the chastity and the reputation of another person. وَنَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى. And that is a major sin. Okay, so let me give you an example. It's a had punishment. The punishment, back if there was Islamic governance and administration, that person would be publicly humiliated and whipped for doing it. So let me give you, this is how grievous this issue is. So, if I was to see a man and a woman, both Muslim, having intercourse, having intercourse. I came in and I saw them having sex and I couldn't say anything about those two people. Okay? If it was me and another brother, two of us came and we saw, we couldn't say anything about those two people. Three of us, three, mashallah, well, let's not mention me, three righteous, upright, awliya of Allah Azza wa Jal, imams, muhaddithin, mufassirin, the most three righteous people on the whole planet, saw this happening. They couldn't say, it's Islamically Shar'an, they're not allowed to go out and say, oh, we saw A and B fornicating. Haram. And if they did, these three most righteous people, they would be chastised publicly and whipped when if the Islamic governance was going on. So we've got to understand how to critique each other. We've got to understand how to counsel each other. And this whole jumping on bandwagons and doing what other people do, that's not the prophetic way. And that's not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to do. That sister had her opinion. Let her do it. She wants to become an anchor woman anyway. Everyone's going to see her on TV. That's what her goal is. Well, what's the difference? There's a difference. You don't like it. There's no reason to call her promiscuous. There's no reason to jump on the bandwagon and say that she's doing whatever. If you want to counsel her, I'm sure she's easily accessible. I think she's got like 100,000 Twitter friends or whatever they call them, followers. Write her a thing in between you and her without being a hero and say, listen sister, I'm thinking this, that. But you know what the better thing is? What did the Prophet say? Make 7 excuses for your brother or your sister. Mate, what's it to you? What's it to you? Well, you don't like the magazine? And that was I saw one critique, which didn't even talk about the sister at all, talked about the magazine. How the magazine exploited the sister. That's the correct critique. Correct magazine. Hey, wait a minute. Since the 50s, you've been showing naked women, now all of a sudden you're trying to, whatever you're trying to do, whatever your game is. Okay, so it's very, very important. And look, the honor of the Muslims, the ulama said, the honor of the Muslims is determined by the way we treat our sisters, females. It's not about us. We're all right. We're a different scenario. I'm not saying we're all right, but we're a different scenario. But if we can't respect and honor, in particular, the reputation and the nobility of the sisters, then what are we standing for? What do we stand for? What's all this praying and all this far? What's all that for? What's all those things for? What's the ummah? What's it for if we can't do that? So we need to be careful about doing that. And if we see people doing that as well, we shouldn't go out and publicly say, oh, this is qadaf and this and that. Give them a counsel if you can. And at least make dua. And if you don't like what someone's doing, it's just a difference of opinion. Difference of opinion shouldn't make conflict. It shouldn't make a dispute between us. It didn't make a dispute between our imam. They didn't dispute, like the 4 imams. They didn't dispute, and the students didn't dispute over these types of things. It was the ones who came later on that were just fanatical in their following, in their ittiba', that made those problems. So if we are truly going to be an ummah, that's not the prophetic way. That's not how we counsel each other. That's not how we respect each other. That's not how we, inshallah azza wa jal, guide each other to what's righteous. That should be our goal when we give someone nasiha. They said, Liman ya Rasulullah? It's to Allah and His book. The counsel that we give is to Allah and His book. Allah and His Prophet and His book. So they're the type of things that we should be encouraging. And me personally, I was a bit tacky, but maybe that sister's going to get to a readership that would never ever read about or not understand Islam. Only what they see in the sensationalist media. Maybe that affected somebody. Maybe it's a good thing. And like I said to you, I've been saying previously in the last couple of months that every opportunity we have to do da'wah, to call people to Allah, or to clarify people's misconceptions about Islam, it's becoming, Allahu alim if it's becoming wajib on us, but it's becoming very, very important that we do it. It's becoming almost an obligation upon each. Now the statistics are like, 60% of people would be worried if one of their family members married a Muslim. So it's not getting better, it's getting worse. And if we don't do anything about it, we want to wait for a politician or a law change or something. No, we have to do something about it. We have to take, the onus is on us to contribute in whatever minimal way. If we can't do that, then at least we should make dua that Allah Azza wa Jal clarifies these misconceptions about Islam. But I think that all of us, as long as we speak the language, we have the capacity in some way, shape or form to inform people. We have to. Whether it's on social media, whether it's personally, whether it's talking to someone, whether it's joining. And I think we've got to get out of our comfort zones. And that was actually the message of this sister. You know, we need to get out of the comfort zones. We need to get out of our own ghettos, for use of a better word, our enclaves of Muslims, and doing the things that we always want to do. We need to feel uncomfortable. Because if we don't, that's the people that when we go amongst them, or the communities or the places where we go that we feel uncomfortable, that's where the people who really want to know about Islam. They want to know. But if we're not passing the right message and we're not giving them the proper knowledge, how can they make an educated decision about yes or no? So of course they're going to say no, because unfortunately the information they're getting is incorrect. So inshallah azza wa jal, they're just some things that I thought maybe we could consider, some things that came to mind that have been going on around us, inshallah azza wa jal. And also coming up is the 10th of Muharram. We'll talk a little bit, 9th and 10th of Muharram, talk about next week, inshallah, which is the day that Allah azza wa jal emancipated the Jews from Egypt, inshallah azza wa jal. Any questions about any of those things? No.
Should we leave it for after?
No, it's up to us.
It's I have an issue with the way that you framed her actions as being, even though disagreeable, I mean, not something that people should be speaking out against, because what she's done is the same as, for example, what Ch23.Cl02 has done, and why they're calling him out, is because in their effort to do dawah or sort of appease or calm the non-Muslim audience, they've thrown a lot of Islam, the honour of Islam, under a bus, and that they've gone through a medium that's very detrimental to the Muslims who currently reside in their area. Now, personally, I don't think that, this is a topic of interest, but or anything we should be focusing on, but just in this regard, I have a problem that, I don't even know what defines halal and haram in this regard, because what we're seeing has a direct impact on our Islam and our ability to live as Muslims. Her being in a magazine or her consent to be in a magazine that objectifies women and treats them as another fetish in their Playboy collection as just a Muslim, her agreeing to do that is problematic for the other Muslims, and problematic for the legacy of Muslim women in America. It doesn't matter what they say, they've still got her where they want. And the same thing with Ch23.Cl02, who would most likely say that we're trying to appeal to the most racist elements of society and give them an opinion that they wouldn't usually get, at the expense of now they've used his stories, about love poems about second and third and fourth wives, and he's legitimized Andrew Bolt multiple times on his own show, and he's moved to, he's starting to talk about Shaykh extremism, radicalism, without any expert opinion whatsoever. And this, while he tries to toe the line of this is it and this is my dawah, it affects other Muslims very negatively. At what point in time can we speak out against that?
So that's a good question. And the rest of the hadith of Din Nasiha said, the Prophet says, لِأَئِمَّتِهِمْ وَعَامَّتِهِمْ. So it doesn't mean that we don't counsel people who, in our own personal view, have done something that we believe is detrimental to the Muslims. In particular, it's haram, or it's forbidden, and secondarily, if it affects the Muslims, but it's the way that we do it. It's not that we don't. Of course we do, whoever that person might be. But it's the way we do it. And the point that I was trying to raise is that you can't make qadhf. You can't.
Definitely, that's
So that's what people have been doing to this sister, right? And others may have said the wrong thing or not, but then it's up to us to have a dialogue with that individual, that other Muslim, and say, brother, sister, whatever the case might be, look, this is what's going on. And in my view, because all it is an opinion. It's your opinion against their opinion. Unless they've done something that's explicitly forbidden in the deen, then it's a different thing. It's neither my opinion or your opinion or anyone else's opinion. So why should my opinion have more weight than anyone else's opinion? Maybe my opinion is that I'm doing something beneficial for the Muslims, and my line of reasoning is A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
But if you're a subject matter expert You're expert in the political field, expert in the journalism field, and you know that's a bad idea.
Again, it's an opinion. Even an expert's opinion is still an opinion. So the question is that how do we respect each other in that regard, and even respect someone who's wrong? So we may not agree with their actions, but that doesn't mean we disrespect the individual who's done those actions. And then there's a way for us to like a procedure, if you want, or a process where we can talk to that individual and try and set them straight. So the only time throughout history the scholars would openly say something about an individual is a generalization. So for example, the biggest issue was Khalqul Qur'an. Is the Qur'an a creation or is it sifa of Allah? And so the Imams would never say, this Imam said is that and he's wrong. That Imam said this and he's wrong. That Imam, they said, I'm Imam so-and-so, my reasoning on this issue for these reasons is blah, blah, etc., etc., etc. And I say that the Qur'an is the sifa of Allah, it's the words of Allah. And whoever says that it's a creation is outside the fold of Islam. That's how they left it. Each person, unless the Khalifa comes along, and which is an administrative, that's how it was called. So unless there's an administrative arm or an executive arm of government that says, look, the official stance of the Muslims in this regard, on this point now, is this, then it's still an opinion. It's still an opinion. And that's the freedom that we have as Muslims. Like everyone else talks about freedom of speech, but that freedom in terms of speech is fundamental to who we are as Muslims. Because if people can't debate these things openly and freely, then how are we going to get to the higher understanding of Allah? How are we going to be able to implement the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the way of life of the Prophet of Allah in the time in which we live? So that openness of discussion has to be there. It might be that if someone is doing something openly wrong, that's haram or has such a huge detriment on the Muslims that people can't live. I can't think of anything. I can't think of anything that would put people in harm's way. So it's something that harms the Muslims or has harmed.
If you call for persecution of Muslims, is that haram or halal? It's haram.
What do you mean persecution?
If you call for Muslims wrongly because you think your opinion is correct, like a general person thinks his opinion is correct, and you call for their persecution, you say these people, these radicalized people, they need to be taken into account, then you legitimize the narrative that is unfairly imprisoning and targeting other Muslims.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. That's a different thing because there's scholarly consensus on that. Like if you look at the scholars, and talk about the types of ideologies that are out there, oh, you can leave it. It's all right. Look, there's what they call al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah is the consensus of Muslim scholars from thousands of years ago. They have set from thousands of years ago what it is and who belongs to that al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah. In other words, the greater group or community, more correctly, of the Muslims. Al-Ash'ira, Maturidiyya, Ashab al-Madhahib, Ashab al-Turq. That's not something, the Sufiya, that's not something new. That's something that's been around for thousands, or let's say hundreds of years. And so, if the research from what the scholars are saying, and if you speak to the scholars, it's almost unanimous. People like Abdullah bin Bayat, people like al-Qaradawi, all these people that are out there that are saying, look, there's unfortunately a pervasive ideology out there amongst Muslims that doesn't conform to Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, that is not always, but has, as a large majority, been the cause of this radicalization and extremism and even worse, terrorism. Then the weight of scholarship has to be considered in that regard. And if someone who's a layperson is relying on that scholarship for their opinion, then unless there's something to refute the vast body of Muslims, we're talking tens of thousands of scholars that have come out and said these things, then I think it's problematic, irrespective of what my personal view or your personal view is on the issue. The scholars have spoken, and it's not one or two, and this is where this brings it back to the deen. There's a thing called ijma' in the deen, which is the consensus of scholars. When there's a consensus of scholars on an issue, it basically becomes deen. And that's kind of what's happening around us at the moment. Look, is it the best way to approach it in a non-Muslim environment? I think that the question is to be asked about that. But at the same time, if it's not spoken about, what's the harm that's going to come to the majority of Muslims? Because in my view, and I've taken my view from the consensus of these scholars, that the confusion out there is not who are the terrorists, but all Muslims are terrorists. So if there isn't a differentiation of who these violent criminal people are, being Muslims with a specific ideology, if that's the case, then all Muslims are going to suffer. So yeah, maybe a small minority of Muslims are going to suffer because of shubha, like doubt. Some of it's maybe like, for example, this group is deviant, for example, and some of the people of that group aren't, let's not say they're extreme or violent. These people are violent. These people have this ideology of violence. Maybe 20% of them are and the other 80% aren't, or maybe whatever it is, whatever the percentages are. Some people will get affected by that. Is that better than the whole ummah, the whole spectrum of Muslims being affected by that? In my view, I would say yes, and that's what the consensus of the scholars are. So we're moving into territory there where once the scholars have made a decision about something like this, Shaykh Muhammad Yaqubi, there's so many of them. The Habayib, there's so many scholars throughout the Sham, throughout Jordan, throughout North Africa, throughout Sudan and different places, Egypt, and Azhar, all these people that have been saying this repeatedly, even in Shishan, even in Bosnia, a lot of scholars have been saying this, and it's become overwhelming. Now it's become a small group of those who don't follow Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah against the majority of the community. Okay, we may not like it, and we may, it may be difficult for us to accept. Unfortunately, that once the scholars have got a consensus about saying, unless we can refute their arguments by speaking to them and by scholarly argumentation, we're in a difficult scenario. And that's what fitan are. That's what fitan are. Fitan is that it threatens people's deen. They're trials that threaten our deen. And that's what's going on with us. So that's the fitna we're in at the moment. When Afwan. We're blind. We don't even know who's who anymore. Absence of light. It's dhulma. It's darkness.
The dark patches of night. Was that the hadith?
The bukma. I don't know. Yes. Yep. Bukma. We can't, it's total darkness. And unfortunately, that's always been the case. That's always been the case. It's not something new. Always been the case when new ideologies came out, when new people came out and said certain things, the Khawarij, the Mu'tazila, Al-Karamiyya, Al-Qadariyya, all these different groups that came out, it was difficult. Yet if the scholars didn't take the action they took at the time, then the continuity of the deen would have been lost, and Allahu Alam what would have reached us in terms of deen. So I don't know if that helps, but create some clarity to it. Whether we agree to it or not, that's the way that Islamic laws form. That's the jurisprudence of Islam is based on the consensus of scholars. And if we don't conform to that, then we risk ourselves being outside that fold. And the Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah isn't like this magical thing or whatever. It's the community of the scholars that protected the integrity of the deen for those hundreds of years that we've been talking about it. I don't know, the research is coming in over and over and over and over and over and over again, that these people are not from Ahlus Sunnah. The current research is coming out that from Muslims and from non-Muslims, from things that are based in politics and funded by politicians, to things that are independently funded, from academic studies to PhDs and other types of theses. Overwhelmingly, in my experience and from the people I speak to are experts in the field, they're coming out and saying that unfortunately the ideology is fueled by those people who don't follow Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and those people that have the us and them mentality. They're saying that either you're with us or you're against us. And so that's what's going on. They're killing Muslims. Muslims don't kill Muslims. Muslims don't even punch Muslims in the face. That's not what we do. That's not the Quranic injunction. So unfortunately, how are they justifying killing Muslims? By saying shirk. By saying that these people are idolaters, and they're not. They're praying towards the Qibla. And that's what Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah say. Anyone who prays towards the Qibla, they're a Muslim. Whether it doesn't matter what denomination or what sect they might follow. Yet these people are coming against that and saying, oh no, they worship graves or they whatever they do it. So they're mushrikeen. So therefore, if they're mushrikeen, they're dumb. Their blood is halal for us, and their property is halal for us, and their women, when al-Haddad, is halal for us. And that's what's going on. The countries that are being affected are in the West. They're in Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan. They've been Muslim countries. They're it's called Dar al-Islam, which means from hundreds of years ago, those countries have been Muslim, and they fatahu bil futuhat. In other words, when the original openings, the futuhat came in the khulafa, these are the countries that became Muslim, majority Muslim countries. More Muslims are being killed by these guys than anyone else. That's problematic. So somewhere along the line, someone's going to have the finger pointed at them. And if the consensus of scholars is that it's that group, then we can only look at their methodology, and if we can refute it by other methodology, then we're entitled to. Otherwise, we have to consider which methodology we're going to follow. And it's not easy. And it's a difficult time. It's difficult to see the Muslims killing Muslims, and it's not something new. Siffin, Jamal, all these battles that happened. Sahaba were killing Sahaba, not Muslims killing Muslims. The companions of the Prophet ﷺ were killing each other, fighting each other when a'udhu billah azza wa jal. So, unfortunately, the fitna, they continue until Allah decrees that they don't, when the Mahdi comes, inshallah. But it's a good question, mashallah. And it's a lot to think about for us young people. It's a lot for us to think about, but we need to think about it. We need to make a pact with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We need to make that pledge. And that's what it was. That's what it was like before. The people would pledge allegiance to a side. Sorry, like it or don't like it, that's how Islam's been. Don't ask me, ask the Prophet. Bay'at al-Aqaba, Bay'at al-Ridwan, all the bay'ah that people took, they weren't even in Mecca. And anyone who became Muslim, they took bay'ah, they pledged allegiance to the Prophet of Allah. Why? So that we can be together, so we can be aligned with each other. That's what gives us strength. When we're not aligned with each other, and then that disparity is the cause of our destruction, and the cause of the destruction of our faith, which is more relevant and more poignant. Or any questions, please ask, because it's serious stuff, and this is the fitna we've got to deal with. This is the tribulation we've got to deal with, and if we don't ask the questions, jazakallah khairan, we're not going to know how to deal with it.
So, like for the ulama's ruling is that the goodness of the greater community is obviously more important than, or takes precedence over the minorities.
What the ulama go back onto is authentic scholarship. So authentic scholarship, if it's followed sincerely, should lead a person to become a righteous Muslim.
Yeah.
Okay. So these guys are doing things that are not righteous, burning people, all these things. So they look at what's the basis of this. Why are these guys who claim to be acting in the name of Allah, claim to be acting for Islam, why are they doing these things? And so the ulama look back and they say, well, there's a khalal, there's a deficiency in the scholarship they're following. Oh, let's look at the scholarship. Oh, okay, it's deviated, for use of a better word, from what is Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. In what way? Firstly, the Aqidah. They have certain things about Allah. Allah's like this, anthropomorphism, I think they call it something like that. That Allah's got a body and all these things. Okay, what else? And they're fiqh. And it's true. Like, how can you have your scholars, Ibn Taymiyyah, I think he's Shaykh al-Islam, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawzi, Shaykh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, Shaykh bin Baz, Shaykh bin Uthaymin al-Dani. What?
That's what you got?
Are you serious? So in the millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of scholars, you choose 6? Okay, you choose 6, fair enough. Okay, we're with you. You chose 6. Do you take everything they say? Oh, no, we're selective. What do you mean you're selective? Tawassul. Al-Istighatha, it's called as well, where you say, Ya Rasulullah, help us, whatever. Oh, no, we don't take from there, that's shirk. Wait a minute. Imam, and I've seen it myself, Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, he's sahha how many hadith? Or we don't believe in Sufi tariq. He's a Qadri. Imam Ibn Taymiyyah is a Qadri Sufi. Okay? Well, how can that work? If you're taking things selectively, that's what the scholars talk about. If you're taking, that means what are you doing?
Messing around with din.
You're playing games, whichever, with Allah. Okay? Therefore, how can we rely on what you're saying if you're playing? That's what it comes back down. It's scholarship. It's scholarship. I read the hadith myself. No one had to tell me. I went out and did the research and found Ibn Taymiyyah, the Fatawa of Ibn Taymiyyah is about 30 volumes. It's tremendous. The guy was kind of as if he was living amongst us. Some of the Fatawa he has so appropriate for our time. You want to take him, take him. Is he Shaykh al-Islam? He's Shaykh al-Islam. Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya's student, he's a machine. Was there goofy Sufis at the time? Yes. Were they in Dalala? Yes. Does that mean all Sufis and people who follow Turk are in Dalala? No. At the time, he came and he straightened them out. So, now that's one question. The other thing is, I'm going to do my own scholarship and my own interpretation of Qur'an and Hadith. Habibi, that hasn't been from the Prophet of Allah ﷺ didn't do that. Don't worry about anyone else. He didn't do that. Who taught him? Alayhi salam. Sayyidina Jibreel was sent from the heavens to sit down and teach him everything. So how am I going to come along 1,000 years later than these scholars and say, read from the Qur'an? People don't even read Arabic. They've got no scholarly basis and they just make their own interpretation. That's where the problem is. If I'm making my own interpretation of Islam, I'll tell you this thing. A shaykh without a shaykh is a shaitan. A shaykh who doesn't have a shaykh, he's his own man, is a shaitan. Because nobody after the Prophet ﷺ can understand the whole deen. We all understand parts of it, and we do our best to understand the flavor, the tone, the vibe of the deen, but we can't understand it all. We don't have that capacity. No one. That's how it is. Allah might open upon particular people from al-ilm al-ladunni. Isn't that what we read today? Surah Al-Kahf? Yeah or no?
No.
Where did that knowledge come from? Okay? Allah's showing us every Friday that there's abdan min ibadina. Allah will open up on some people. Leave him! Leave him! Allah's opened up that person. No worries, champ. You do what you got to do. Sayyidina Musa, what did he do? Went back to his people and did what he had to do. It's a lesson for Sayyidina Musa. It's a lesson for us. Those ones, they're exceptions. They're exceptions. Abdam and ibadina. The rest of us, we have a minhaj that we follow. I don't go and read a verse of Qur'an and make up my own mind. What is it? اقتلوهم حيث ثقفتموهم. Kill them wherever you see them. Habibi, okay. Does that mean you're going to... No, what are you talking about? Or what about even with TK? Remember we spoke about TK last week? Technical kufr. What is it? Naam? تفضل.
Regarding the fitna, how can the fitna be stopped? It's not easy. The fitna keep increase, especially in the Muslims community or Western countries. The fitna is very bad. So
It's
how
very
can
bad.
the fitna be stopped?
Like, unfortunately, we have to take a side. I might change my mind tomorrow. I haven't really thought about it very much. Is that recording?
Yeah.
I think you should turn it off because I don't really